Hauntings of Derek Stone, The City of Bones, by Tony Abbott. Chapter 1. What Happened on the Train. I'll tell you straight. The dead are coming back. You won't believe it, of course. You'll say it's crazy. It's impossible. It's whatever. Fine. I get it. Most of the time I don't believe it myself, but it's happening, and it affects all of us. If you're smart, you'll listen and be afraid. If you're really smart, you'll run. And you'll do it now, because pretty soon there won't be anywhere to run to. I'm going to tell you everything that happened from the moment my father, my brother, and I stepped onto the train. That's probably a good place to begin. I say probably, because I'm not sure exactly when the story began. Maybe it was 10 years ago, maybe it was 10,000 years ago. But never mind that now. You need some facts. My name is Derek Stone. I'm 14 and just finished 8th grade. I live in New Orleans, Louisiana. I'm a little chunky. I have pimples on my chin, but not too bad. The hearing in my left ear is not good because of an infection I had when I was young. My hands are small for my age. I don't have many friends. My GPA is 4.27. So what? It's nothing. I'm telling you everything. For years it's been just my father, my brother Ronnie, and me. Ronnie is 5 years older than I am. We've been pretty close since he finished high school, because he still lives at home. My mother left 10 years ago. She said Dad was away too much, so she moved to Paris to be even farther away. Yeah, I don't get it either. There's one more thing you'll need to know. I don't make things up. I don't imagine. I don't daydream. I like real stuff. True things. Up is up, down is down. Fire is hot, and water is wet. I like what I can trust. That's it then. You know enough for me to start. It was late afternoon on a Saturday when my dad, my brother, and I raced onto this train in Alexandria, Louisiana. Alexandria is a couple hundred miles southwest of New Orleans. We wouldn't normally be on a train, but we took one more then because the day was all about trains. My father was a nut about vintage train stock, the kind that rumbled through our state until about 30 years ago, north to south, east to west. They huffed black coal and white steam into the humid air. Dad loved old-fashioned locomotives. He had collected little models of them as long as I could remember. He tried forever to convince me and Ronnie to go with him to the annual Train Mania convention. We never wanted to go, but we went this year because he really begged us, and because it meant so much to him, and because we were both too lazy to concern another excuse. So fine, we went. Imagine, it was just 6 in the evening and hot in the 3rd Street station. The only day in late June could be. We flew through the gate, nearly missing the train because Dad had dawdled at the convention. He couldn't decide which of the 3 train models to buy, but he finally ended up with the replica of the 1928 Southern Arrow. The 3 of us had just jumped through the train door into the car when the train gave a great screech. The last call for the 610 to New Orleans sounded over the address system. Whistling like a kid, Dad dived into one of the 2 open benches and slapped the seat next to him. Derek here, left side, Ronnie on the aisle. I slid between Dad and the window with my good ear to him. He was pumped. I was exhausted from a full day of squeezing through aisle after aisle in a giant hall of train geeks. For one thing, I hated the non-stop noise. For another, I was sweaty and tired. I'm not all that light on my feet, and running through the train station wasn't my idea of a good time. Ronnie sat on the aisles. 2 soldiers in full fatigues took the bench seat opposite of us. Does this matter? You decide. Ronnie and I had this gag going, which started during our race to the station. I pretended to be a cranky old man trying to get into the last seat. and Ronnie kept calling for Mr. Conductor in a British accent. We fooled around with this again until the train squealed a second time, ready to set off, and the doors started to close. All of a sudden, a mother and daughter stumbled through the doors and stood panting at the aisle, breathless from running and clutching handfuls of shopping bags. The girl was about my age. Along with everything else, she was holding a pastry bag with white and red string. I remembered it because of what happened later. The doors hissed, the train groaned a third time and began to roll. When it did, the two soldiers turned to see the girl and her mother. One of them, a short, weary guy with a thin face, sprang from his seat, nudging the buddy to get up too. "Take our seats," he said, bowing and waving his head to the open seats. "Please," said the other one. He was tall and had shoulders as wide as a baseball bat. As giant as he was, he had a full, round, laughing face. He looked as if he were in the middle of telling a story that he couldn't get to the end of without cracking up. "Please sit." "Thank you," said the mother. She and her daughter sat down opposite of us, while the two soldiers stood in the open area near the door. The moment we pulled out of the station, a block of orange light glinted between the buildings and across the girl's face. She blinked and turned her head away. I don't know if that means anything. I'm only saying that the sun was starting to set. That was some of the last we saw that day. Dad unwrapped the Southern Aero train model and we studied it. Oh right, here's something else. Dad loved trains, but he sold boats. He sold boats, but he didn't like water. I guess I inherited that from him. No, that's not right. Genetics has nothing to do with it. I had a thing about water because once... No, never mind. I'll tell you that later. Ronnie, though, was a fish. All through high school, he was the best swimmer. The swim team won state championship twice because he was the captain. He must have gotten his love of water from Mom. Mom loved to swim. She swam right of our lives 10 years ago, but I already said that. The girl's name was Abby. The girl across from us, I remember because her mother said, "Abby, can you reach up and put my bags up on the upper thing?" I remember thinking she probably wanted to say luggage rack, but couldn't think of the words. So the girl's name was Abby. Remember that. Dad rose up from his seat to help her put up the bags. Me, I wasn't doing anything special. I had a book in my lap, and I wasn't reading it. After we settled in, Dad turned back to his miniature train and started talking about all the old stock that once crisscrossed the South. He knew a lot about them from the Civil War on. The Del Monte, the Owl, the Golden Rocket, the Coaster, the Plymouth, the Arrogance. I didn't mind listening to Dad go on. It was his day after all. I glanced past him at Ronnie, who actually asked decent questions. Dad swallowed them up, telling us everything he knew about if he'd ever asked before, which we hadn't. About an hour into the ride, when things had quieted down, I'd begun my book. Abby laughed at something. I glanced up. Her mother was pretending to opening the cheesecake on the sly, when Abby pretended to keep catching her. Maybe it was fun of the day, or maybe because her mother was acting silly. But Dad abruptly came out with, "Excuse me, ladies, it seems like you need some help with the cheesecake. Maybe I can hold it for you." They both looked up, astonished that we had caught them playing their little game. "Dad!" I groaned, embarrassed. But Abby and her mother burst out laughing. "No, no," they chimed. Ronnie and I laughed too. As I remember, that was when Dad arched up in the seat, his eyes fixed on something outside the window beside me. "What is it?" I asked, following his gaze. The bridge we're going across," he said. "It goes back to the 1930s. The Southern Aero probably crossed it 1,000 times. I have some great books about old bridges if you guys are interested." Wow, is this beautiful? We all looked. The bridge was neatly assembled of steel grinders hatched markets against dark blue sky. The trestles below the tracks were pale silver, streaked with lines of rust from bolts dotting the seams. It looks old. We felt a bump on our car rolled across the tracks onto the bridge. The rumbling over the steel rails was loud and hollow. As the train moved over the span, the grinder splashed slowly by the window to my left. Light, shadow, light, shadow. The bridge curved slightly to the left, so leaning against the window I could see the engine roll into the far side. Then the first car was on the land, the second. It was strange watching the train move like a snake across the air. As our car rolled toward the middle of the span, I saw for the bridge, though treeless beneath us, a deep chasm between two steep rocky slopes, with a dark river at the bottom. I turned away when my legs tingled uncomfortably. "Do you have a place for the Southern Arrow in your collection?" asked Ronnie, nodding at the model in Dad's lap. "In your special room?" "All picked out?" Dad said. "I'm going to—" A sudden shudder went through the car, a feeling as if the whole weight of the train had shifted backward heavily. Then, a sound of wrenching iron. I looked at Dad. His mouth was open, his eyes dark. "Dad," I asked. "The bridge." He started. "Oh, no." The car sank, still rolling forward. Some people shouted. The conductor stumbled between the seats to the door that connected our cart to one of them in front of us. But our car dropped backward again. He was thrown to the floor, and we all pushed back in our seats. The conductor hung onto the seat backs and made a sound in his throat. "We're falling!" End of chapter 1.